reasons for it is that Advocate Chauke was not in compliance with the prosecution policy when he pursued a case against Major General Boyson with regard to racketeering charges when there was no evidence linking him to this matter. And also it relates to the withdrawal of the charges against General Mdluli when there was prima facie and strong evidence to the contrary. And those are the main aspects, and then some other decisions that were taken in the context of these matters.
Okay, the President only acted on your request, we all know this by now, July 2025, just days after General Kwanaze's press conference, alleging that corrupt prosecutors were aiding criminal syndicates, drug syndicates in Gauteng, right? Why do you believe the President waited almost 2 years to act on a matter raised by the country's top prosecutor 2 years later?
I want to say to the Honourable James that it was something that was out of the hands of the NPA, and as I indicated earlier, we certainly followed up to try to get the matter dealt with speedily. It was already, and there was nothing further that we could do. I indicated earlier that I do know that the President, that there was a further legal opinion that was sought, which would have also delayed things somewhat. But apart from that, I cannot really say why it took that long for the decision to be made.
And during this time, what was Advocate Chauke doing? Was he continuing with his daily duties as usual, despite being connected to these cartels and to these persons?
Well, there's no allegation that he was connected to cartels in this matter. But yes, he was the DPP in South Gauteng.
And he continued, despite the red flags, he continued to do his daily work, and no one did anything.
I agree.
Only up until the 6th of June, when General Kwanaze made those allegations, suddenly, 2 weeks later, the President acts.
These are complicated processes.
Definitely.
And there are processes within the President's office, clearly. He needs to apply his mind to this, and one can understand why he might have wanted another legal opinion. And so I agree with you. It is totally unsatisfactory. It is unsatisfactory and potentially unfair for the individual and for the institution. And I've said this publicly, and that is, it was really important that this matter be dealt with speedily for both the individual and the institution. And I can't explain any further, but to say that I agree with you. It's not an acceptable situation to have someone under a cloud like this and still be conducting day-to-day work. But the reality is that is what, with these labor processes, we have to follow process. And it was what,
and it's
coincidental
that the process, a decision was taken 2 weeks after General Kwanaze's allegations. I think I'm stuck there.
I can't help you get unstuck, unfortunately, because I don't know
clearly
if it was linked at all. I can't comment on that.
Okay. Advocate, are you aware that former Johannesburg Mayor Herman Mashaba has repeatedly raised public concerns about Advocate Chauke, where he made clear that the Advocate Chauke was an obstacle to the prosecution of corrupt cases that were presented to him with clear evidence? Are you aware?
I'm aware he has made public announcements about this, but there's no case that he has presented to me where, if I heard you correctly, where, maybe you could repeat the last part of your question, please.
Okay. Are you aware that former Mayor Herman Mashaba has repeatedly raised public concerns about Advocate Chauke, where he made clear that the advocate was an obstacle to the prosecution of corrupt cases that were presented to him with clear evidence?
I can't comment on that because I'm not aware, but I would certainly urge Mr. Mashaba to send me the details of those cases very urgently. In fact, if he can send it to me tomorrow, I would be very pleased.
Sure.
Thank you.
Here are copies of the many cases that Mr. Mashaba sent to you. You were CC'd in on these cases. A dossier was handed to Advocate Chauke of cases, I think amounting to over 35 billion of corruption cases uncovered in Johannesburg. You were CC'd in all of this. I can give you the date, the 16th of May 2029. You are now saying that you were not aware. I've just brought a few of them to this house to prove to you that you were CC'd in this case. You haven't responded to not any one of these cases. This was 4 years prior to your suspension. You received smoke signals already about Advocate Chauke, which you did nothing about.
I need to have a look at that.
Honourable James, you may come down a bit.
Thank you, Chair, for the reminder. I put it, you said earlier on that it wasn't brought to your attention. You said confidently you know nothing about it. I'm saying to you, 4 years prior, the suspension of Andrew Chauke, there were smoke signals. It was sent to you with evidence, with serious cases within the city of Joburg, and you ignored all of these emails.
Now that you prompt my memory,
Okay.
he did send emails, and we certainly don't ignore emails.
But you just said you weren't aware.
I need to follow up and to see what happened to those matters.
I can tell you nothing happened.
If I could please have those cases,
They're in
because
your inbox, ma'am.
we are, sometimes emails don't reach you, but in this case, I'm aware that he did send some communication, but I need to check to see what happened to that. Because you may rest assured, Honourable James, we don't want to cover up anything. And if anything, I would want to get to the bottom of allegations that any prosecutor, any DPP, is in fact not prosecuting where there's clear evidence of it. So I need to see what happened to that, because we definitely respond to emails but from anyone, and particularly from heads of...
Yes, I would like to think that you would take an email from a mayor seriously.
We do.
You've ignored, you cannot say you do when I've got evidence and proof. Several emails, an entire dossier was handed to Advocate Chauke. He did absolutely nothing with it. It was highlighted to you that this person is corrupt. It was highlighted to you that this person is covering up for serious construction companies within the city of Joburg, Zimbabweans, with fake documents. It was brought to your attention, as well as Advocate Chauke, that is currently on suspension for over 2 years, that was allowed to continue covering up in the department. In fact, this has been going on for over 6 years, if you take into consideration when these red flags were highlighted to you. And you've done absolutely nothing. And then earlier on, you said that if there's any concerns with regards to cases, I must bring it to your attention. Will you take it seriously when you are saying to us now that sometimes we miss things in our inbox?
We always take these very seriously. And I want to say to you, I want to apologize to Mr. Mashaba that if he has not received a satisfactory response. But I do want to check to see what my office has done with those matters, and I can then give a more substantive reply.
I can tell you they've done nothing. But anyway, do you roughly know how many drug-related offenses have been handled by Advocate Chauke during his tenure?
No.
Are you aware of the conviction or the success rate in drug-related and other criminal matters prosecuted by Advocate Chauke's office in the South Gauteng division? Because that's where the bottleneck is when it comes to drug-related cases. South Gauteng division.
I don't have the figures, but we can certainly get that.
Okay. Would you agree that showing that Advocate Chauke frustrated the proper functioning of the criminal justice system in Johannesburg for so many years that there may have been some plausibility to General Kwanazi's allegations that certain prosecutors in the same environment were deliberately sabotaged to protect drug cartels?
Before I can comment on that, I'd like to get details, proper details from General Mkwanazi about who he's referring to and what these allegations are about. Because they're just allegations, and I can't comment on allegations. I need the facts.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
It's been a long evening, Advocate Batohi. And maybe let me just start off by saying I'm a bit starstruck when Chairperson, I won't lie. I've admired Advocate Batohi's work for a very long time. I remember when she was trying the Hansi Cronje matter. There was this beautiful newspaper cover, where it was just her eyes, and then it says, "In the eyes of the tiger." That was amazing for me. And I think watching you as a prosecutor and the work that you've done internationally, we really commend you for the great work that you're doing. So thank you so much. Thank you for making the time to be here. Advocate Batohi, just tell me, since July 6th, when General Mkwanazi made these allegations, I know you've spoken now about things that you're trying to do, but what happened in the NPA? Were you shook at all in any way by these allegations? Was there anything that was done?
I think like the rest of the country, we were certainly taken aback by the allegations. Since that date, I have not approached Advocate General Mkwanazi or the police for details of this. But given that we have now testified it's out in the open, I will address a letter to the National Commissioner seeking details so that we can properly understand what's going on and take the necessary action.
Okay. In paragraph 22 of your statement, you indicate, so you're talking there about the prosecution policy and how matters are decided, or at least what must be prosecuted. You then say that you refer to a matter of public interest as a consideration to prosecute or otherwise. So I'm just interested to find out, how is public interest determined firstly? And then are there any cases that you are aware of where public interest has swayed the decision to prosecute or not? And if you could share those with us, please.
If you give me one moment, Honourable Sangoni. My apologies for this. I did... this is, I wish I could find this. When dealing with public interest, it is an important factor, and it deals with aspects such as the gravity of the offence, the circumstances of the community, of the individual concerned. Generally, the courts have found that when there's allegations relating to a particular crime, it would be in the public interest to prosecute a matter. But there are instances where you would consider factors that I've just mentioned and come to a conclusion that it would not be. For example, an example that I might be able to give here now is, for example, a father who has, been involved in an accident, and his child is killed in that accident, and the father is responsible primarily for that accident. You might consider everything and say, should we charge the father for the culpable homicide with regard to the death of the child? And then we would say, look, he's suffered enough. So those are some of the factors. I said the nature and seriousness of the offence, the interests of the victim, community, the offender's circumstances in some instances. So I think those are, there's no closed list, but those are some of the guidance that we give when we make these. But it's generally we lean on the side of prosecution, but we do consider those factors.
So there's no controversial, I use the word lightly, but controversial cases that you've chosen not to prosecute and, prosecutors hide behind, it's in the public interest.
No, it's not.
For example, a GRILLS.
For example?
A GRILLS.
That was not a public, my understanding, it wasn't a public interest matter, but it was the circumstances and the ID explained issues relating to him cooperating in other matters. So it was certainly not a public interest issue.
Okay. All right. Then on paragraph 83, you were asked a little bit about that issue where you make a recommendation to depoliticize the appointment of senior leadership within the NPA. Can you give us examples where this is done, perhaps in other jurisdictions around the world, and whether you necessarily think that that is a better model, given the fact that the politicians, at least that you have worked with, have given you space to do your work, even though you're appointed in the manner that the Constitution or the NPA Act outlines?
As I mentioned earlier, it's the fact that it is the president's prerogative to appoint the head of the NPA. Unless it becomes a Chapter 9 institution. I've said that there are very, very few jurisdictions, and in fact none of them come to mind now, where there's some level, where the executive do not appoint the head of the prosecuting authority, and there isn't some level of accountability to the executive. And that being the case, it therefore becomes really important for the executive to respect the independent mandate of the prosecuting authority, and for the prosecuting authority